Martin Gilbert, who runs Aberdeen Asset Management, was sitting in the chair that you're sitting in right now a couple of days back, and we were talking about Scotland, and he said, the First Minister, she won't call another independence referendum if she's not convinced that she can win. The polling is tight. The polling is incredibly tight and really doesn't point either way at the moment. Is she rolling the dice?
Well, I note that Ladbrokes, the magic sign, on the first day of the Cheltenham Festival, have made independence favourite in the referendum.
Right.
A narrow favourite, but still favourite. Whether that's more important than psephologists or market analysts, I don't know, but the bookies tend not to throw their money away. So there's a lot of indications that the arguments that have changed fundamentally since 2014 have changed in Scotland's favour, and Scotland, particularly on the European dimension.
So this is not a roll of the dice. This is something that the First Minister think can almost certainly be won. Because if not, the chances of another one...
Well, the decision-making is with the First Minister, but remember, it's just over 300 days, less than a year, since she was elected First Minister of Scotland, with 47% of the vote, on a manifesto commitment that if Scotland were to be dragged out of Europe against the will of the Scottish people, then this is what she would do, and now she's done it. I mean, Theresa May, if she doesn't, I mean, you said it adds to her woes, but at any time over the last 3 months, she could have made the concession, accepted the compromise that Nicola Sturgeon had offered. That is, if he was determined to go out the single market, then let Scotland stay in. Still part of the UK, but still in the single market. Theresa May dismissed that, swept it aside, not interested, and now she has, well, she's now been confronted with the reality that Nicola Sturgeon is not a woman to be underestimated.
So in some ways, the First Minister didn't have a choice but to do this?
Well, she kept her I mean, I know, the Tories sort of ripping up their manifesto on national insurance contributions today, of course, in the budget. Perhaps that's unfashionable in the Conservative Party, but Nicola Sturgeon obviously thinks the manifesto on which she was elected should count for something, and I think so do the Scottish people.
Do you think that the Prime Minister will listen now? Like, if you're saying that she hasn't listened before.
Nicola Sturgeon said the door's still open. I mean, I noticed that in her comment yesterday. So if the Prime Minister were to say, well, perhaps I should have taken Scotland a bit more seriously, perhaps I shouldn't have gone last week and delivered a lecture to Scotland about how to run their public services, particularly when they're disastrous down in England. Perhaps, and, there's always, people can always change, but Theresa May hasn't shown any flexibility or sensitivity to Scotland since she's become Prime Minister. She hasn't, in fact, all the devolved administrations haven't had a look in the Brexit talks. She seems single-minded, determined to go ahead with a hard Tory Brexit. Well, that's not what Scotland voted for in the European referendum, and it's not the inclination of the Scottish people. Do
you think she will listen to the request? Back to the adding to her woes comment, well, she's got plenty on her plate right now. Well, why should she? Why should he?
I had some track record on this. I mean, David Cameron used to tell me there wouldn't be a Scottish referendum, but when confronted with the reality of the Scottish Parliament voting for one, he had to accept democracy. There has to be a referendum. Now, the political cost to Theresa May, if she tries to turn it down or delay it...
I was about to say delay, probably more likely.
Is going to be massive, because then you would have an English Parliament turning down a democratic request of Scotland as a nation to exercise self-determination on a manifesto commitment in which the First Minister was elected. I think that's a very, very weak position for Theresa May.
If, and you talk about the Tory hard Brexit, if the Tory hard Brexit were not to come to reality, would the referendum be cancelled? Well, is it about hard and soft Brexit?
Well, I thought the timing that Nicola Sturgeon's put forward is very interesting. I mean, taking the window up to the spring of 2019. Now, by then, of course, the deal or no deal will be clear. Because
Are you sure about that?
Well, it has to come to the Westminster Parliament and to the European Parliament.
What happens if it hasn't?
Well, it will have, because there's a two-year timescale on Article 50. So, by definition, that you'll know towards the end of next year.
That's a big risk, though, isn't it?
Well, it's not a risk at all, because that is the timing that Nicola Sturgeon, and she's kept it flexible, has put forward. And, of course, the absolutely right time to have the referendum is when you see what's emerged or not emerged in terms of that and gone to the Westminster Parliament and can compare that against the vision of a Scotland in Europe. Make no mistake, incidentally, a Scotland within the single marketplace would have a huge competitive advantage over an England which wasn't in the single marketplace, for investors, for firms, for companies. That's probably a reason, another headache for Theresa May. I mean, the last thing Theresa May gets up in the morning and thinks about is what's good for the Scottish economy.
Edinburgh becomes the new city of London, right?
Well, Edinburgh certainly, I mean, Edinburgh has many advantages and specialisms in finance already, but certainly it would be a huge strength. Something like Martin Gilbert would be one of the first to recognise the advantage of having much of his base within the single marketplace.
I just want to use my Bloomberg for a moment. And get this thing to move on and talk a little bit about where oil prices are. So let's talk about the reality of an independent Scotland and whether or not the economy actually functions. It's underperforming the rest of the UK right now. That was you there.
Yeah.
This is where oil prices have gone, and that's the regression chart. Oil prices are pointing lower. Shale is the enemy of Scotland in certain ways because you could argue that it makes the price lower and lower and lower, but that's an aside.
Particularly since Paraffin Young invented shale oil in the 19th century in Scotland.
Yeah. As so many things in this world were invented in Scotland. At $60 a barrel, is Scotland viable as an independent economy?
Yes, it is. I mean, look, at $60 a barrel, as you put it, Scotland would be the 15th country in the world per wealth per head, GDP per capita, number 15. There are, 200 countries in the world. That means we'd be better off than the other 185 behind us with oil at $60 a barrel. One place above the UK as a whole, incidentally, with oil at $60 a barrel.
Why is the GDP not showing that at the moment?
Well, obviously, the GDP in Scotland excludes oil, incidentally. It's the onshore impact of oil. I would argue, actually, that given we've lost 100,000 jobs in the oil industry, to have Scottish unemployment at 4.7% against the UK at 4.6% actually demonstrates a substantial degree of resilience in the Scottish economy. Obviously, the area I represent has been hit hard, but unemployment at 4.7%. Now, as the industry recovers, as it is recovering, and I'm sure it will recover, because it can be nothing more certain in oil than what goes down comes up and what goes up comes down. And it'll be with us for a long time to come.
That's my point about shale, is that shale probably means that it won't come back.
Yes, but the industry, look, we've lost a lot of jobs in the oil industry. It's Scotland's most significant onshore industry, perhaps 100,000 jobs as an impact. But the industry is living with $60 oil at the present moment, and investment is starting again, particularly with new entrants into the sector. And one thing's for sure, incidentally, there's a lot of hydrocarbons left in the waters around Scotland.
Yeah. I can show you the forward curve, and it doesn't exactly point to a much rosier price than where we are now.
No, but the point I'm making is the industry has had to adjust to $60 oil, or less for that matter, and the projections now are made on that basis. So if oil was to spike again, that would be an advantage on the projections. But we've taken the hit, and a very substantial one for many, many workers, incidentally.
Absolutely.
But I think the overall point, what makes a country prosperous? Yes, having oil. There's 50 countries in the world have substantial quantities of oil and gas. Oil prices go up, oil prices go down. They'd still rather have the oil and gas than not have it. And even at $60 a barrel, Scotland comes in at number 15 in GDP per capita. So there's an underlying strength in the Scottish economy, based not just on natural resources, based on brains. I mean, Scotland has more universities in the world top 200 than any other country per head, except, I think, one.
Let's talk a little bit about the mistake in some people's minds that David Cameron made. He didn't have a plan B. So the Brexit vote happened, didn't go the way, and there was this kind of vacuum that existed after it. Are you certain that Scotland, as an independent country, could rejoin the European Union?
Well, yes, I am. I think what you'll find is, over the next few months, that a very distinct perspective will open up for Scotland in Europe. I think you'll be able to see exactly how Scotland can secure its position, probably first within the European Economic Area, and then we'll have a friendly reception across Europe. I mean, Scotland has many, many friends in Europe. The UK has virtually none left. And this is a big transformation with 2014. I mean, look, in 2014, as First Minister of Scotland, I couldn't get in to see Mr Barroso. As the Foreign Affairs spokesperson of the Scottish National Party in December, I had a long meeting with Jean-Claude Juncker. I mean, there's a total difference, a sea change in attitude towards Scotland, because people across Europe know that Scotland is basically pro-European and are totally exasperated with a government in London which is pursuing such a reckless Brexit course.
What did he tell you about whether or not Scotland would have to join the euro?
Well, these are private discussions, but I mean...
But you discussed it?
Well, yes, we didn't actually discuss Scotland joining the euro, probably because we know the facts. For example, Sweden is in the European Union, but not in the euro.
I know, but the rules...
The rules are you've got to be in the exchange rate mechanism for 2 years before you can even apply to join the euro. And being in the exchange rate mechanism is a voluntary act. That's why Sweden isn't in the euro, and that would apply to Scotland as it applies to, I think, 9 other countries who are not in the euro.
So you wouldn't expect Scotland to have to join the single currency?
Correct.
OK. Would it be full membership? Would it be transitional membership? Could there be a period in which you're not a member of either union?
Well, let's see how this emerges. But of course, the logic of having the referendum on the timescale that Nicola Sturgeon has outlined is you'll be able to compare the hard Tory Brexit plans or whatever deal they manage to get with what emerges as the prospectus for Scotland in Europe. That's what's going to emerge over the next few months. And I'm certain that, the negotiations about Scotland will be a good deal easier than the negotiations in London and Brexit.
Right. And this would happen quickly, concurrently. It wouldn't be a problem. The risks are enormous if it doesn't work.
But what I think is really important is to understand the economics of this. What you need to do is ensure your continuous membership of the European Economic Area. Right. That's what matters in economic terms. That includes, obviously, the European Union. It also includes Iceland, Norway, Liechtenstein. So it's more than the European Union. But in economic terms, you need to ensure your continuous membership. That's the logic of having the referendum that Nicola Sturgeon and the timescale that she's proposed. And that will be Scotland's objective. And we'll see how that argument compares with the uncertainty of Brexit and the hard Tory Brexit that Theresa May... You know, Theresa May spoke to the CBI, wasn't it, about a cliff edge.
Yeah.
She's careering towards that cliff edge. So against, last time in 2014, I was told great uncertainty about Scotland being an independent country. Most of the uncertainty, most of it, lies now in London.
Is that a new badge, or is that the one that you got from last time round?
This was on the advice of my lady wife. She dug up the badge yesterday morning and says you might want to wear this, Alex.
So that's a 2014 badge.
That's a 2014. I'm sure there'll be much nicer, much better, much more modern badges in Nicola Sturgeon's referendum.